Hi, my name is Alex Dolphin and welcome back to another episode of Ex Ante. Today we're going to discuss the case of Howard versus Federal Crop Insurance Corporation. This case was heard in the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, the year of 1976. Let's go ahead and jump into the facts of the case. So Howard was a tobacco grower. Howard was growing quite a bit of tobacco in the year 1973. A good portion of his tobacco crop failed because there was heavy rains. So luckily Howard was a smart tobacco grower and he figured he would procure himself a crop insurance policy so that if something crazy like heavy rains, maybe a flood, maybe a fire came in, that he would be able to insure himself against those future damages. So that's exactly what he did. He took out a policy with Federal Crop Insurance Corporation that would cover his crops if any were lost or his output wasn't what he expected due to the weather. So yeah, in the year of 1973, because of the heavy rains, his crop wasn't exactly what he expected it to be. He went ahead and filed a claim on his insurance policy, alleging that he had lost out on $35,000 of profit because of the heavy rains. So he files the policy with his insurance corporation. After he files the policy with his insurance corporation, he mows down the tobacco lot, right? He just mows everything down and he plants rye seed. And then so the insurance agent comes out and looks at the property and he assesses the damage, but he can't assess the damage very well because none of the tobacco crop that was damaged by the rains is there any longer. Luckily, the insurance corporation had protected themselves, or at least they thought they had, in a clause that said that if the tobacco, if any of the crop growers, the tobacco grower in this instance, mows down his field before the insurance policy agent is able to come out and see the damage, that then the insured, so the tobacco farmer, wouldn't be able to recover any of his insurance policy from the insurance company. So there's a clause, they're in the casebook, it's 5F and 5B. 5B says it shall be a condition precedent. So it says it shall be a condition precedent, and then it lays out some terms for the tobacco grower to comply with, namely that he just needs to be able to prove out that he lost out on this much tobacco because of the storm or whatnot. And then more important is 5F, which I'll read completely. It says, the tobacco stocks on any acreage of tobacco of types 11A through 14, with respect to which a loss is claimed, shall not be destroyed until the corporation makes an inspection. So the insurance company is arguing that this clause, 5F, is a condition precedent. And what they mean by a condition precedent is it's a condition that must be met by the insured, by the tobacco grower, if he wants to try and claim recovery for his lost tobacco crop. And they're saying that it is a condition precedent because in 5B, just a few paragraphs ahead of that, they have specific language that says it shall be a condition precedent. So the district court sees this and they say, yeah, definitely it's a condition precedent. The tobacco grower mowed down the crops. We're not going to allow him to recover from this insurance company because of that. Now, the appellate court, the Fourth Circuit, says that, let's look at this a little bit more carefully. In this 5F clause here, there is no specific language that says this is a condition precedent or a condition. And they say that when there's not any specific language about it being a condition, then we're going to say it's a promise. So a promise is different from a condition because if someone doesn't meet or live up to their promise, it's kind of like substantial performance. Envision the case where there was the pipe and it went in the house and the guy didn't want to pay for the pipe, but the court said, well, you have to pay for it just minus the damages, substantial performance. So if it's a promise, the tobacco corporation or the tobacco grower had to live up to that substantially. So the court is saying, well, we're not going to say that the tobacco corporation lived up to that substantially. We're not going to really say that he can or cannot recover. What we are just saying is that when there's ambiguity between whether something is a condition precedent or a promise, we're going to say that that thing actually is a promise because that promise is a little bit lighter. It's not as heavy as a condition precedent. So the court remands this case and sends it back to the district court for further proceedings. So that's the case. Some ex ante discussion just between that of a condition precedent and a promise. A condition precedent is much more heavy. A condition precedent must be met to the letter. It's kind of like If you're drafting a contract and you want this thing done very specifically, then you would make sure that it is construed to be a condition precedent, right? Because if it's not done exactly to the conditions set in that clause, then you won't have to pay. You can get out of that contract. Whereas a promise is a little bit lighter. It's saying that if you don't live up to the promise that you set forth in the contract, you're not necessarily let out of the contract. You just are allowed to, recover damages from the person who didn't completely live up to their end of the promise. So promise is a little bit lighter than a condition precedent. What the precedent set in this court case, in this court decision, is just that parties are going to be a lot more careful when they draft contracts. And if you're really specific about wanting something to be a condition precedent, you ought to actually have those words in the line specific to what you believe ought to be a condition precedent. Because if you don't, it is very likely that a court's going to see that as a promise, because that is the default for them. If it's unclear whether it's a condition precedent or a promise, they're going to default to the promise, which is a little bit lighter for both parties to adhere to. Which is a little bit odd, because condition seems like it would be lighter than promise, but it's actually the opposite way around. So thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you'd like to see more, go ahead and subscribe to this channel. Hope that I see you again soon. I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye-bye.